On the 6th July, His Holiness Dalai Lama turned 85, and now we also got news that Tibetans are forbidden to study their own language. So do you know that?
Oh yeah, I mean that's been coming for a long time. I mean, making the language police in Tibet have been working on this for a very long time. It's part of the larger sinification project that the CCP has been doing with great effect for a very long time. And so this is not new, but again, it just doesn't get reported. It just doesn't. It's seen as irrelevant to Western media. But it matters so very much. If you want to study the CCP's plans for global domination, study Tibet. They're going to start banning English if they take over America. The one country that the CCP will never, ever be able to invade or take over is India. Because it's too big and because it's too strong in terms of its nationalism, and they give refuge to His Holiness Dalai Lama. But now this is something interesting I'd like to point out to your listeners. The Modi government was trying to curry favor with the CCP. And last year, 2019, was the 60th anniversary of the Dalai Lama's escape to India. And they were going to have a whole year of programs called Thank You India. To thank India. The Tibetans were going to thank India for giving refuge, generous refuge, to His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Tibetan refugees. And I was there in 2009 for the Thank You India 50th anniversary events, which were extremely moving. I wept on many occasions. So there was His Holiness, holding hands with Indian officials. And there was an older man who'd been a young soldier in 1959, stationed in Arunachal Pradesh, where the Dalai Lama escaped into when he escaped the PLA that was chasing him and trying to kill him and almost killed him, and got into India. And he was an older man now, and he said he had a dream a year before the Dalai Lama's escape that he had to build a road to the Tibet border. And the Indian government wouldn't fund it. They said, this is crazy, it's just a dream. So he funded it out of his own pocket. And if not for that road, His Holiness may have died. And he was there, and he said, and speaking back, well, last year, the Modi government canceled this. They canceled it, and Tibetans were very sad about that. A lot of my Tibetan friends who worked hard on this project felt very, very bad about it because they wanted to thank India and they wanted to show, Indian Tibetan solidarity. But this year, now that the CCP has invaded India again from Chinese occupied Tibet, wow, the Dalai Lama's 85th birthday, which was a week ago Sunday, was a huge event in India. He was given just a hero's welcome in Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is the Songnam Hai of New Delhi. Now, for the first time ever, the Indian government is giving him permission to do live streams from Dharamsala. And he's doing teachings, and he's doing public talks. And I urge all your listeners to watch it. It's at DalaiLamaArchive.com on YouTube.
Yeah, that's actually my idea. I think we'd like to say connect a live stream so that people say Buddhists around the world can listen to His Holiness Dalai Lama's lectures. Yeah, wherever they are.
You can. Yeah. Now you can, because the Indian government finally gave permission. I remember 15 years ago, I was in Dharamsala. I said we should get a live stream going here, and the Indian government won't allow. And now they are.
The Western mainstream media has sidelined Tibet. Mm-hmm. How about their coverage of current Hong Kong?
It's appalling. Appalling. In the last month, I've been watching a lot of mainstream media. I find it painful because it's so bad. Hong Kong has hardly been mentioned at all. Just barely. Not one mention on the ABC, CBS, NBC. Public television, PBS, had 15 seconds on Hong Kong last week. 15 seconds. So, they're treating it like it's not a big deal. It's getting so little coverage, but they're just endless coverage about how evil and corrupt the American government is. Big tech and big media, I think they work for the CCP. I think they bought them off. They've got them, and they're working against America, and they're American citizens who enjoy the freedoms and privileges of the open society in which they were born, in which they live. But they're working for the CCP. And it's going to be very hard to take big tech down because we depend on them so much. And the way Twitter just got hacked. That's a big story yesterday. Twitter just got hacked. But you know, all these guys, they work openly for the CCP. They have for years and years and years. Now, are they covering this story? Are they covering how children are being tortured by the Chinese Communist Party? I don't think so. Nothing about that. Nathan Law has not been interviewed. He did a BBC interview, I saw, on Ben's Twitter feed. But in America, oh no, they're covering up for the CCP's crimes in Hong Kong. Well, just wait. I'd like to send all those people to Xinjiang for 5 minutes, or Tibet for 5 minutes, and see how much fun they have, and see how terrific and how fabulous the Chinese government is. But they won't do it. They're too chicken, and they're too comfortable, and they're in the elite bubble, Dr. Ming. They live in an elite little bubble. This is something Mr. Bannon talks about all the time. You know, is that the elites are just out of touch with the ordinary Americans. Now Americans are asking for tags on all of our consumer products to say if it's made in China or not, because then they don't want to buy it. But the elites are still defending the CCP, the Committee of 100, the Asia Society, the Council on Foreign Relations. I think it is time to send an open letter to them, because they always get out in front of us because we have no resources. We have to self-fund everything we do. And the fact that they haven't shut us up completely just shows how committed we are, how determined we are. Even though we're broke, we're penniless. I've had to take all types of crazy day jobs just to pay for my Tibet work, my CCP takedown work. Well, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing these other writing projects of no relief just to pay my bills so I can still do it. They always get right out and they define the narrative on China. And last year, the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, the Committee of 100 and Asia Society, all these people, published an open letter in the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, Mr. Amazon, who works like that with the CCP. There's an open letter to President Trump and the American government saying, this is no time for tariffs. This is no time for being tough, completely ignoring the atrocities that are being committed in Xinjiang and the crisis in Hong Kong. Saying we need to be close, we need to strengthen ties with China and not weaken ties with China. Well, I would like to send them an open letter saying, do you support the people of Hong Kong who came out in record numbers last weekend to vote in a democratic process? Or do you support the one-party, authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship of the CCP? Which side are you on? Because there's been deafening silence from them about Hong Kong in the last 2 weeks. They're probably preparing some statement saying, well, what's going on in Hong Kong is China's business and we shouldn't interfere. It's an internal affair of China. That's what they always said to us about Tibet. It's an internal affair of the People's Republic of China. So you have no right to comment on it. Well, I call it Chinese occupied Tibet. And yes, we can comment on it. But we should get out in front of them. And there's a sea change in how China is perceived by the people on the ground. But the elite in America still support the CCP more than ever, especially the Democrats. There's a lot of Republicans who are very much against what the Trump administration is doing. There's a whole group called Republicans Against Trump. Well, they're probably people who have a lot of investments in the CCP. Or why would they be doing this?
You know, a judge ruled in favor of Michael Pack for sacking BGG directors. I know you like it. So the BGG directors sued on the ground of media independence from Trump. Haven't they in reality collaborated with the CCP?
Well, yes, they have. And I'm looking for my picture of one of the top collaborators. Where did it go? Libby Lou. Here she is. She was behind the lawsuit. She's the one who fired my friend and colleague, Jigme Ngabo, who was running the Tibet service at Radio Free Asia, who was highly regarded by all of his colleagues. He was doing the best work of his career, exposing the self-immolations in Tibet, where people would go very bravely, stand in front of People's Liberation Army garrison and say, long live the Dalai Lama, free Tibet, pour kerosene on their bodies and light their bodies on fire. And over 300 people have done this now. And Jigme was covering these stories. And for this reason, she fired him. And it wanted to cover puff pieces, soft news, anything that wouldn't upset the CCP. So Michael Pack fired her when he came in, which I applaud, which I congratulate him for. And immediately she starts a lawsuit and she's going around Washington playing the victim card. You know, I'm a woman, I'm Asian, so that's why they're doing this. No, you got fired because you worked for the CCP and you did a terrible job. And morale has never been lower. And she used the U.S. taxpayer funds for all these fancy trips around Asia, where she would take a broadcasting board of government governors members with her to Burma, to India, to Hong Kong even, you know, and have fun and dine and wine and all this stuff on the taxpayer's dime, and she's not doing her job. So I'm glad that the federal judge upheld Mr. Pack's appointment, because that shows the lengths to which they will go to keep the appeasers in power. Sorry, Libby. Sorry. We've been trying to get rid of her for years. I wrote so many letters. I wrote letters all over to all this, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. So thank you, Mr. Pack.
Yeah. You're very pleased. I can see that. Yeah.
Up in the champagne.
Yeah.
Do I have any champagne here? I don't think so.
Let's talk about Huawei. Yeah. Yeah. So the U.S. Department already announced that the employees of the Chinese technology companies will be banned. Yeah. Will be subject to visa restriction, typically Huawei. So what do you think of this?
It's about time. Better late than never. This is a war. This is a war. And you know, all these guys on Wall Street who still apologize for the CCP, you know, probably have investments there, and that's why they're doing it. Oh, we can't decouple. Oh, it'll make things worse. Well, what could be worse than what we have now? What could be worse than this pandemic, which still has New York City in lockdown, in a 4th month of lockdown? The suicide rate is now higher than death from the CCP virus. But you know, because the mainstream media is just covered up China's way, you won't even mention it's not the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus or CCP virus. It's COVID-19, and they're using, a lot of Democrats are politicizing it, and that's again the Huawei story just gets buried in all of this. But I think it's very interesting what's happening in England, you know, where they want to phase it out. But again, the timelines for these phase outs is too long. Giving them what, 10 years to phase out?
7 years.
That's too long. And again, it was a victory for the Committee on the Present Danger of China, of which I am a member, which is it's a small organization doing extraordinary work. They were the ones who got it on President Trump's desk to stop $500 billion of American pension funds going into PLA military stocks. And he used his executive pen to stop that. Thank God. Well, with Huawei, you know, it's the same thing with this. The Senate passed some law that, you know, they would, but it gives the CCP companies 3 years to comply with New York Stock Exchange audits. That's too long. It should be 30 days. We got to play hardball. That's the only thing that they'll listen to. And you know, I think we could break the CCP right now because of these terrible floods that are happening in China that are not getting no coverage, zero coverage in Western media. So I watch ZTV. There's my new favorite broadcaster is Palki Sharma of Gravitas on ZTV. I encourage all of your listeners to watch her. She's doing incredible reporting on the floods in China, how China is taking over Nepal, on the border war that the CCP has started with India from occupied Tibet. And it is catastrophic, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers know. And I feel so deeply for the people of China, for the people who are living downstream from the Three Gorges Dam. You know, and here is what Palki Sharma broke on Gravitas on ZTV a couple of nights ago. I watch her every day. That the CCP is allowing the Three Gorges Dam to unleash the floodwaters. All the sluices have been open, and flooding these cities deliberately, without giving people the time to evacuate, because they know the dam can break, because it's a project of Jiang Zemin's family. You know, all of these boondoggle projects, they're all some CCP party members' family. We know the Deng family is the Shanghai gang, you know, and the Zhang family is the Black Hands gang. You know, and again, there's a huge power struggle going on inside the CCP, which never, never, never gets reported in mainstream media, which I've written about for years. The Epoch Times writes about. And you can be damn sure that Papa Xi is feeling the heat. And I know that the Jiang Zemin family made a lot of money on the Three Gorges Dam. And, you know, maybe they're trying to use this to weaken the White Hands gang. I don't know that. But I do know that they're very worried because, you know, I also heard from my sources in India and Indian intelligence, who always have the best breaking information about what's going on with the CCP, that they also want to flood Wuhan to cover up any evidence of the bioweapon escaping from the P4 lab. That would do it, wouldn't it?
They will try all means to cover up that thing.
Yeah. They'll let millions of people die. They don't care. They don't care if millions of their own citizens die. If they can cover up that evidence, they'll do it. And there's a WHO, World Health Organization delegation is supposed to be going to Wuhan, you know, investigate. Oh, yeah. They're probably going to Shanghai to get wined and dined.
Have you watched the exclusive interview of Dr. Li Mengyan by the Fox News?
Yeah.
She fled from Hong Kong and she used to work in the P3 lab of the Hong Kong University. So what's your comment?
Well, she's very brave. She's obviously brilliant. My goodness, she's so young and so pretty. You know, it's just extraordinary. She's so accomplished and so brilliant, you know. And she's extremely well spoken. I believe everything she says. Because, of course, she's taking tremendous, tremendous personal risk to do this. That's another thing Western media, it just doesn't inform people about. It's just like how much a personal risk these brave Chinese citizens are taking. Because, you know, for many, many years, Chinese communist agents operating in the United States have gone after people of Chinese origin who have full American passports now for speaking out against the CCP, particularly members of Falun Gong. I remember very, very well in 2008 during the Blood Olympics, there was a case that, again, downplayed by the Western media, if not for Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey. God bless him. He's like me. He's one of the few Americans who just won't shut up about the CCP and won't stop. Because at least we've kept a record, thank God. You know, not everybody bent down and kissed the blood-stained hand of the CCP dictators. Thank God there's some of us, you know, who stood up, and he is an elected member of Congress. He had hearings about this. There was a Falun Gong practitioner who was speaking out about the atrocities in China and how they should not have been given the privilege of hosting the Olympic Games. And a group of CCP agents who'd come to America on tourist visas. And again, it's easier for them to get visas than for Indians. It's so hard for my Indian friends to get visas to America. Even wealthy Indians, you know, who work in the or former government officials, they get rejected all the time. But CCP, oh man, that you can get a visa just by breathing is the old joke. They came to this man's house in suburban Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C. They beat him so viciously, they broke every bone in his body. And they took his computers and they said, we're going after your family in China. You better shut up. And then they left and they got on a plane and they flew back to China. And they were obviously flew to America just for this purpose, to beat up and silence this gentleman. And he was only saved because one of his neighbors came back and heard him screaming and screaming for help, and managed to get into his house and find him in a bloody heap on the floor of his house. And they explained what happened. And this has gone on. A lot of the Falun Gong practitioners in Queens, in New York, and in San Francisco, which is a big Chinese community. Well, you know, one very feature of the new security law is that the CCP is going to go after anybody who criticizes them anywhere. So I wonder how long it'll be before they come after me. Because, you know, I'm saying it loud and clear. Free Hong Kong revolution now. Free Free Hong Kong revolution now. Free Hong Kong revolution now. Are they going to come after me in the middle of the night? I'm waiting for them.
So, in the UK, Cambridge Local Council approved Huawei's plan for building a 1 billion research center. What do you think?
I think it's madness. I also think they clearly must have been paid off. Money talks. The CCP knows that. I think the British government should ask, how much money did they get paid for this? You know? It just also goes to show the lengths to which the CCP will go to advance their global agenda of world domination, which they feel slipping away with the virus. Now the world's turned on them. So, you know, I predicted on Mr. Bannon's show in April that they were going to start a war in Asia, and certainly now they have with India, which is the one big power that they cannot fully control. And I've also heard, and I think we've all heard, they're getting ready for an amphibious assault on Taiwan. So what the hell is Cambridge University doing? Did they work for the CCP? Like Tim Cook, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg, and Jack Dorsey, all these big shots who run big tech, they work for the CCP. New York Times still takes color page ads from China Daily, and until they stop doing that, I assume that they're proxies for the CCP.
Well, you mentioned...
You got to pick sides. Which side are you on? On the side of Nathan Law, on the side of the Dalai Lama? Are you on the side of us? Are you on the side of Xi Jinping, Wang Quishan, Jiang Zemin? Which side are you on? You better pick quick.
These people you mentioned just now, Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Sundar Pichai are set to appear before the Congress on July 27th in an antitrust hearing. Do you think it is helpful to make them accountable in this way?
Oh, Big Daddy Tim. Big Daddy Tim. He's probably calling Wang Quishan on his made with slave labor Apple phone from Shenzhen. I don't see him asking for a free Hong Kong. I'm glad they're going to be hauled in front of a Senate hearing, but this has happened before. Again, Representative Chris Smith did this after the Blood Olympics, the Beijing 2008 Olympics, about why they were collaborating openly with the CCP and sharing technology. And they all took the Fifth Amendment. They had their lawyers with them. They, you know, keep it quiet, keep it quiet. And I assume they'll do the same. They must be running scared now. Because my question to them would be, I wonder what the CCP has on you. I wonder if they've honey trapped you. I wonder how they've bribed you and they've been taping the conversations. And which, you know, again, these are American citizens who enjoy the privileges of the free and open society in which they were born. They have American passports. They can call Donald Trump Satan and they will not be arrested by the secret police and have a bullet through their head like you would in China so fast. You know, and they're so critical of the American government, and they're full of praise for the CCP. Which side are you on, pal? But I think this hearing, I hope they get tougher questions than they have traditionally in the past. They, you know, maybe that would just be Chris Smith or my dad. My dad is dead now, you know, who would ask tough questions. And, you know, where are the Senate Democrats on this? Where are the Democrats in the House? They, you know, I'm very, very disappointed with a lot of the Democrats, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a very pretty young lady who was elected 2 years ago to the House of Representatives from Queens. And she said something that I found absolutely appalling. She said, we've got to keep the whole country locked down until November because it's more important to defeat President Bush. And so if we lose a few jobs, so what? Lose a few jobs? 40 million Americans are out of work. People are committing suicide in New York because they can't pay their bills. Which side is she on? I mean, will she come in there and try to disrupt the hearing and defend these guys? We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, you're talking about the pandemic. So, amid the pandemic, millions from the U.S. government's Paycheck Protection Program were sent to the CCP-linked companies and state-owned enterprises. So, What's your thought?
Well, doesn't that show us how deep their tentacles have gone into our society? Doesn't that show us everything? That they've got their clutches into everything. What else is there to say? It's disgusting, but it's evidence. Wake up is what I try to tell my American friends. I still get calls from these American friends of mine who go on and on about how Trump started the pandemic and how it's so terrible and Joe Biden's going to save us and everything. What? Are you kidding me? The Joe Biden Center at University of Pennsylvania, a very distinguished university, took $70 million from the CCP illegally, now being investigated by the Department of Justice. Well, and he says, oh, China's not a problem. China's our friends. A strong China is a good China. How's he going to, I mean, these people think that he's going to save us. And I said, I think our country can survive 4 years of a duly elected Republican president a lot better than having the Chinese Communist Party take over this country. And they look at me like I've just confessed to being a child pornographer. Yeah, Maura, how can you say that? You're a Democrat. How can you say that? I said, I say that because I understand the Chinese Communist Party. Clearly, you don't think that they're men. I said, no. The real problem is Russia. I said, oh, really? Where'd you get your information from? The New York Times? I give up on these people. I just give up on them.
Okay. Days ago, the Wall Street Journal reported, specifically on 8th July, the FBI is examining my school, Steve Bannon, and Caiaphas. And, my school commented in his live broadcast later that it was a fake news. What do you think?
Of course it is. I've had to defend doing my interviews with you, with many American friends of mine who are saying, Maura, how can you work for Guo Media? Don't you know that Miles Guo is a CCP agent, that he's an intelligence agent for the People's Liberation Army? I said, oh, where'd you get that information? And they can't say. They go, but I heard it somewhere. I said, you heard it from who? You heard it from the CCP, that's who. And Mr. Guo is the highest level defector we've ever had. And during the Cold War, when my father was the United States ambassador to the United Nations and then became senator from New York, he helped many Soviet dissidents escape and defect to the United States. There was one very dramatic incident where my father drove to the Brooklyn Bridge at 2 o'clock in the morning, and a Soviet gentleman jumped out of a car into my father's car, and my father drove him to safety. And he used to come to our house for dinner. Many Soviet dissidents befriended my father because he spoke out against the Soviet Union ferociously for years. And he also predicted their collapse 15 years before they came down. And he was one of the few people who did. And he goes down in history for that. And so, of course, they're going to say that about Mr. Guo. And of course, and Steve Bannon was saying that that this investigation by the FDA is driven by someone who's on the CCP payroll, who's pushing this narrative, who's already been discredited. But it just shows how desperate they are. Oh, maybe Mr. Guo hurt Wang Quishan's feelings. Because that's they always say, that if you're critical of the CCP, you're hurting the Chinese people's feelings. Oh, poor Mr. Wang. He must be feeling sad right now because we're being so tough on him. Well, deal with it. He tortures children in Tibetan concentration camps. But I believe in karma. You know what they say about karma?
Yeah.
Pay now or pay later.
Yes. What else would you like to say? There are so many things happening and so many things about to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's a critical moment for the world. What Mr. Bannon says on War and Pandemic is absolutely true. that we're going to know with the situation in Hong Kong, and if the Chinese should steal the elections, not just the presidential election, there's the entire House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate. Every 2 years, the House of Representatives, they're all up, and every 1/3 of the Senate is up every 2 years. And it goes all the way down ticket. The Chinese Communist Party has spared no expense in buying off American politicians. I mean, when Kamala Harris was running for president, she's senator from California. She introduced a bill a couple of months ago to call it racist, to call it the Wuhan virus. Come on, Dr. Lee paid with his life trying to alert the world to this terribly dangerous CCP virus. He called it the Wuhan virus, and he's from Wuhan. So she must be taking money from the Chinese. You know, there were all these scandals involving the Democrats taking money, and people went to jail for this. My father asked for an independent investigation in 1997. So this is going to be a very crazy election cycle, and with the country crippled by the lockdowns that are still happening. And I think the country needs to open up more. And my friends in India are saying, with a lot of poor citizens of India, say, I'll take my risk with this virus. Like, we can't stay locked down. We've got to go out and earn a living. We've got to go out and earn a living. And they're politicizing the virus. You know, the Democrats are politicizing the virus. AOC said, we've got to keep the country in a hard lockdown until November, because then and only then will we defeat the Republicans. Well, that might backfire as well. You know, that we could see a backlash against this, you know. And Dr. Fauci, by the way, he approved $7 million of American taxpayer money going to the P4 lab in Wuhan.
Yes.
That doesn't get reported by the New York Times. I was shocked when I read that a few months ago. Well, then he's obviously working for them. Come on. Now, the CCP doesn't waste time and money on people they can't control. They gave up trying to buy me a long time ago. In the beginning, I was offered junkets. I was offered trips. Oh, in the Clinton years, there were Clinton officials who wanted to send me on a fact-finding mission to North Korea, or a fact-finding mission to Taiwan, you know, and or you know, to some, you know, like junkets to Beijing. I turned them all down. All it takes is one trip, and they've got you. And all my trips to Tibet, I self-funded them, and I went in as a tourist, and my guys was being a painter, as we've discussed in our previous interviews, you know,
Yes.
how I'm painting. And so but I've seen so many American journalists and academics go on these free trips. And the new book, Hidden Hand, with Clive Hamilton, has just come out. And I know it's making shockwaves in England, because it exposes how the CCP has bought the British elite.
Yes.
Well, Hidden Hand Part 2 should be about the American elite. And my friend, Dr. Anders Kaur, who lives in England, he's an American citizen, is doing brilliant work on a CCP information. He's just done a review of Hidden Hand, but he has a great idea, which is another action step I'd like to see the American government take. Deny CCP diplomats access to the United Nations building in New York because of what they've done in Hong Kong, and because now we've sanctioned them for the atrocities they've committed in Tibet and Xinjiang. I never thought I'd live to see the day. The American government actually taking action on the atrocities in Tibet. And Secretary Pompeo gave an excellent speech. Yeah. And Zheng Guangguo, my buddy Zheng Guangguo,
Yes.
who was governor of Tibet, and did such a bang-up job with torture, murder, oppression, and expanding the concentration camp with help from American big tech, from all that technology they got after the 2008 Blood Olympics in Beijing.
Yes.
Well, Papa Xi was so happy with him that he transferred him to Xinjiang in 2016, where he's doing such a good job. He's just been sanctioned, and he cannot get a visa to America. He's very mad about that, because he used to pop into Manhattan for some hot weekends. Oh, and I put him in my parody, CCP Cupid, Tinder, and Chi-Com Couples, my Chi-Com dating apps, which is now on Go Media, which I'm very proud of. Because ridicule is a weapon, as the famous Roman senator Cicero said 2,000 years ago. That one thing a tyrant cannot stand is ridicule. So I say, let's bring it on.
Good for you.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.